nagid godlechu ilenai tzach netzuchim kedishos chuna vavagdish ledoi vudoi nagid godlechu ilenai tzach netzuchim kedishos chuna vavagdish.
Hello everyone, this is the first in the series of Unforgotten Heroes, and today I'd like to talk about my third grade rebbe, Rabbi Yona Munk, Zecher Tzadik Levracha. In order to start the conversation, don't take my word for it. In a magazine called Where, What, When, there's an article by one Michael Kiedroff, in which he talks about davening in the same shul as Rabbi Yona Munk towards the end of his life. And he writes the following about him. I have a vivid image of him, chumash open in one hand, the other hand pointing to a pasuk, sharing some insight or question with a fellow traveler, head shaking in satisfaction and wonder as he returned to his seat, as if an issue bothering him for the past decade has finally been resolved, only to lead to another question requiring immediate investigation. And then he writes the following line. His entire body appeared to flow and tremble with Torah. That image of Rabbi Yona Munk at the end of his life is exactly the image I have of him in the year 85-86, Tafshin Mem Vav, as a third grade rebbe in a school called Haub Hebrew Academy of Long Beach, which was then actually in Long Beach, New York. This wasn't a class in which you come in, the teacher teaches the material, asks us if there are any questions, soft-spoken, whatnot. There was banging on the table. There was excitement. He barely could sit in his chair as he told us a pasuk from the Chumash, the Perush of Rashi. When a student asked a question, he would jump for joy, literally. It wasn't the class where he said, and Avram said to Sarah, listen, fake us out, say you're my sister so they don't kill me. He would make it so dramatic that you would literally, and not figuratively, picture Avraham and Sarah having this conversation. Every year when I read the Parshiot of Lech Lecha, Vayera, Chayei and Toldot, the four Parshiot that I was privileged to learn from Rabbi Munk, I could hear him in my mind, not just telling the story, not just giving over material, but experiencing it and making it experiential for his students. I've said many times that laning is not just about teaching Torah to the congregation. If that would be the only goal, then we wouldn't do it in a sing-song. We would do it in the vernacular, be it modern Hebrew, English, or whatnot, and we would face the congregation. Three things we don't do. But rather, laning is also reenacting the Sinai experience. Therefore, the Yerushalmi says that you can't stand up there alone. You need to have at least three people. One person, kiviyachol, in place of God. One person, kiviyachol, in place of Moshe receiving the Torah, and one person getting the Aliyah, kiviyachol, in place of all the Jewish people receiving it from Moshe. So you have a Gabbai in place of God, kiviyachol. You have a Baal Korah in place of Moshe giving it over to the Jewish people, kiviyachol. And then you have the guy getting the Aliyah in place of the Jewish people receiving the Torah from Moshe. This is the reason why the Maharami Rutenberg had a minhag, quoted in the Ramah, to stand during Kriyas HaTorah. And as explained by the Mishnah Berurah in the name of the Bach, because at Har Sinai we all stood, and therefore we stand during Kriyas HaTorah. This being the case, if I ever had to actualize what this means, I would think of Rabbi Munk. He'd bang on the table when someone asked an amazing question. He would come along and dramatize every word that was said in the Chumash. Every question was like earth-shattering. And when a student said a good answer, his joy of Pikudei Hashem Yesharim Misamche Lev, the words of God can make you happy. A pasuk that enjoins us from learning Torah on sad days like Tisha B'Av, you could see right in front of you. And I recall him telling over the first Mishnah in the third parak of Bava Metzia that starts as follows. And I remember it by heart since third grade. If you took your pen and you asked your friend to watch it, and it got stolen or it got lost, and the friend is liable, and then he has a few options. Option number one, he can pay and not swear. Now we're talking about third grade kids. In the 80s, there was a common theme that you said to someone, you promise, you promise, you swear, you swear. Wasn't a big deal. So someone in the class, living in that reality, raises his hand and says, Rabbi Munk, what's the big deal? Let him swear and not pay. Why should he take money out of his pocket and swear? And even though the class was done in Hebrew, totally Ivrit be'Ivrit, since Rabbi Munk came from Israel via Hungary, he banged on the table. He got so serious, I've never forget this. He said, Swear? Swear? A person would sell his mother before he swears. Do you know what a shvuah is? Do you have any idea what it means to swear in the name of God? And then he starts explaining what it means to take a Sefer Torah and to swear. By the time he finished, no one even thought of swearing in their right mind. More than that, he saw a third grade class, kids that are 9. He saw it as a base medrash, a live base medrash. You ever wondered why the Gemara is written in such a way that it's a protocol and not a book? Because they wanted it to be a live base medrash. He asks a question. He goes ahead and answers it. He refutes it. That's exactly the way the class was. Well, within that class, he would go ahead and not only liven up the Torah, he would go ahead and vividly, not figuratively, make us understand the privilege we have to learn Torah. The day that we started to learn Mishnah. He comes into class. He says to us in Hebrew, Etmol, yesterday, Acharei halimudim, after we finished learning. Then he broke into English, I bought a new vest. And he shows us the vest. And he takes off his jacket and dramatically puts on the vest. And right beforehand says, I want to make a shehecheyanu. I want to make the bracha of, blessed be you God, King of the universe, who have kept me alive to this day. Sha'akita sheli matchila lilmod Mishnah. That my class is beginning to learn Mishnah. And he puts on the vest and he makes a shehecheyanu. And we started to learn our first Mishnah. If I have any love of Torah, it is because of that day. Third grade, 9 years old, and a teacher told you, you are about to learn the most exalted Word of God, the Torah Sheba'al Peh, and what a day it is for me. I'm going to make a shehecheyanu. But because you can't make a shehecheyanu on air, I'm going to go ahead and put on a new vest that I took the time to buy yesterday, so I can make a shehecheyanu today. From that day on, I didn't need anyone to tell me what the pasuk means, Ma'ahavti Toratecha kol hayom yisichati, how much I love your Torah, said David HaMelech in Tehillim. it is my talk all day. Because Rabbi Munk talked in Torah all day. At recess, the teachers had to watch the students so that we don't kill each other. And Rabbi Munk took this job seriously. He made himself the referee in soccer games. You could hear him blow his famous whistle, telling people that they fouled. And the way he said it was wonderful. He blew the whistle. The guy said, "What happened?" And he said, "You have to learn not to touch with the hand. You're not allowed to touch the ball with the hand. When you play soccer, that's..." But as he took his job seriously, I remember him talking to Rabbi Lemel Zichrono Levracha, another rebbe in the school, in learning. And he would shake his head, and he would answer, and he would say, "No, no, no," and they were talking Yiddish and a little Hebrew, and they would mix it in. He was talking and learning all day. He never stopped. And the reason I know this is because I want you to fast forward. 1986 to 2003. So here I am, about to be freshly ordained. And God was kind to me. I had one interview, got invited for Shabbos, offered a contract, and that's the way I ended up in the Beth Israel Synagogue in Halifax. On my way back to Israel after that proba, after that tryout Shabbos, who do I see sitting at the gate? None other than his wife, the illustrious Mora Yafa, Zichron Livracha, who also taught us for a while. And I tell my wife she looks like Mora Yafa. So my wife says, "Are you sure?" I said, "I'll tell you what. I'm going to go over to her. I'm going to say Mora Yafa. If she answers, great. And if not, no harm done." So my wife thought I was nuts. But this is what I did. And she looks up, and I introduce myself, and she remembers me. And I tell her, "How's your husband?" And she tells me he just survived cancer, and he's writing another sefer. I get on the plane. Everybody knows it's a long flight. And I said, a third grade teacher never knows how their students turn out. Maybe it would be a good idea that I write him a letter. This is before internet, email, whatnot. I took out paper, I took out a pen, and I penned a letter. Because it was before internet and before email, I do not have a copy of the letter. In the letter, I wrote, "You may think that in chinuch, in education, אתה זורע זרעים ואינך יודע איך הם יוצאים. You plant seeds, but you have no idea how these seeds eventually come out." Well, I want to tell you what happened to me since the last time we met. And I ended the letter by saying I'm about to become a rabbi of a kehillah. And I never forget that first shir in Mishnah that I just described to you. Hamafkid el tzechavero. I'll never forget the way you describe what a shvuah, what a promise, a swear in the name of God is. I don't forget the Perush on Rashi that you said here and that you said there. And I want you to know, this is the way the seed turned out, for better or for worse. Wished him health. So I didn't think I'd get a response, but I felt hakarat hatov. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't leave Mitzrayim until taking the bones of Yosef, explains Rav Soloveitchik. This is because of hakarat hatov. After all, Yosef kept us alive and well all these years. We need to do something. We need to make sure not to leave Mitzrayim without his bones. And I didn't think I'd get a reply, but I felt hakarat hatov. I did what I had to do. About 2 months later, which is the story of the Israeli post office, I get a letter that registered mail has come. Go to the small post office in Alonshvut where I lived at the time, and these two Sfarim were there. The name of the Sfarim is Hagei Yonah, the thoughts of Yonah, his first name. One of them is on the Torah, every Parsha, and the other is on Pirkei Avot and the Yomim Tovim. Wonderful, original insights, and you can hear his voice when you actually read what he wrote. Well, I opened the book, and inside you could see the following, which I must admit always makes me uncomfortable, but also makes me very emotional. Onig miyuchadli. It's a great personal enjoyment for me. Latet mi priyam ali, to give the fruits of my labor. Letalmidi hamitsuyan, to my amazing student. Take out the word amazing. That's what we call exaggeration. Talmidi, I hope, my students. Harab Yehoshua Chaim Greenstein. Now I signed my name Yehoshua Greenstein. That meant he went to the cupboard, he took out his old class list, he saw that my name was Yehoshua Chaim, and he made sure to put it in. And then he writes saying that your letter gave me great joy. And then he decides to disagree with me, exactly like he did in class. Because when you teach Torah, you have to be truthful. This is the word of God. The signature of God is truth. And indeed, he was very truthful. So he gets a letter, he has to respond to it. He doesn't just say thank you. Many years later, when he lived in Har Nof, as I did, there was someone from my old neighborhood that came for Sukkot. And I mentioned to him that Rabbi Munk lives here, and he said he'd love to see him. So we went to him on Sukkot. We sat in his sukkah, we ate grapes, and we reminisced. And he told him he had him as a fifth grade rebbe. That in fifth grade we had this guy, yeah, we had that guy in the class, yes, and we did a play about the Palmach, yes, and he even sang the song, Anu Anu HaPalmach, yes, he's nodding his head. And Toch Kedei Dvarim, as he's talking, he says, and such would come in to help. Rabbi Munk looks at him and goes, help? He didn't come in to help, he came in to criticize. That's a truthful person. He says, you wrote that in chinuch, in education, you plant the seed, you don't know how it comes out. Well, you forgot something, he says. Maybe the seed didn't take root at all. Maybe all our work was in vain. And then he goes on to say, therefore your letter gave me such joy, because not only there was a seed, it took root, and I can see how you came out. He gave me a beautiful bracha towards my eventual rabbinic career. And I have to say, on days when I'm very down, when I need a little bit cheering up, I look at this and I say, a third grade teacher can have such an inspiration. Years and years later, I have to live up to every word that he wrote. And if you read through this book, you see not only his learning, but his absolute respect for Gedolei Yisrael, for the greats of the generation. And allow me to share just one story, a defining one. Ta'anit Esther, 1986. Rabbi Munk comes into class and you look at him and he does not look well. Now it was a fast day, Ta'anit Esther, but still, as Yosef said that morning to the two prisoners, Sarah Mashkim, Sarah Ofim, Madua panecha nefulot hayom. I went up to Rabbi Munk and I said, Rabbi Munk, what happened? And he says to me, Rav Moshe was nifter. And I, without thinking twice, said, who's Rav Moshe? How does a third grade kid know who Rav Moshe Feinstein was? If I would have told Rabbi Munk that day that I went to a Buddhist temple and bowed down to the idol, I think he wouldn't have screamed as much as he did at that moment. He said, who's Rav Moshe? Who's Rav Moshe? You don't know who Rav Moshe is? Bring me your lunchbox. So in those years already, a lunchbox was a thing of the past. You weren't cool if you brought a lunchbox. You brought a lunch bag, a nice paper bag. Oh, I brought my paper bag. I thought he's taking my lunch. Didn't understand it was a fast day. So I bring him my lunchbox. He takes out the sandwich, the fruit, and he gets to the Hershey bar. He holds up the Hershey bar and says, you see this Hershey bar? I said, yes. אתה יודע למה אתה אוכל אותו? You know why you eat it? It's only because of Rav Moshe. And he leaves it at that. Well, as you can well imagine, Rabbi Munk told me that. I made it my life's mission to understand and to know who's this Rav Moshe guy that he's talking about. I never heard of him. And obviously, the next few weeks, articles came out. And I hope throughout the years that I've quoted, requoted, and continued to requote the amazing Torah of this Gadol B'Yisrael, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. And one of the only reasons that I take his words to heart was that episode of a third grade rebbe coming into school depressed because a gadol b'Yisrael died. If he had a relationship with him, he didn't have, I don't know. Gadol b'Yisrael died. You could feel it in every fiber of his being, just like you can feel the Torah in every fiber of his being. For various reasons, we actually learn Limudei Kodesh in the afternoon, not in the morning. And therefore, we actually daven mincha with Rabbi Munk and not Shachris. The way he taught us how to daven was with a nigun. He didn't want davening to be dry. He wanted it to be exciting. The work of the heart, avodah shebalev, and not just the work of the lips. And I remember the nigun. There would be a chazan, so-called. He would say one verse, and we would say the next verse. So let's say the chazan would just read, Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Yehallelu Chasela. He would teach us to say it with the nigun. Ashrei shekachalo, Ashrei shashem elokav. And that's the way to this day. I know by heart mincha, tachanun included, and the same thing was true on Erev Shabbos Kodesh on Friday. We would read Luchon Aranana, the davening, but he would teach us miros. He had no patience for, I would say, lousy nigunim. I still remember Tzor, 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 mishalo achalnu barchu emunai savanu, savanu vehotanu kidvar Hashem, and many others. In a word, it wasn't just a class, it wasn't just Limudei Kodesh, holy studies of Torah, it was an experience, equipped not just with learning and davening, but with excitement, song, praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way it should be. Learning Torah and teaching Torah is not just giving over information. It's an experience. If at laning we not only give over Torah, but experience Ma'amad Har Sinai, then every teacher of Torah should do the same. And I had such a teacher, Rabbi Yona Munk. And I end the way I began, quoting from that same article. His entire body appeared to flow and tremble with Torah. So I'm sure desks have dents in them in the Hebrew Academy of Long Beach because of his banging on the table when a good answer was said or when a lousy answer was said. But most importantly, he taught third grade students. God gave us a gift. He took it out of his treasure chest. It's called Torah. Don't belittle it. Experience it. The minhag Yisrael is, before Rosh Hashanah, to go to the gravesides of your loved ones. And I try every year to go to the graveside of my own father, Zichrono Livracha, the Kedoshim that were killed from Efrat, as well as to the Kvarim of my two foremost Rebbeim, Rabbi Yehuda Amital and Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, Zichronam Tzadikim Livracha. It was COVID, no flights were coming in, and I'm on Facebook, and all of a sudden I see a post. My parents are buried on Har HaMenuchot. I can't get to their grave because of COVID. I said, maybe I can do a chesed for someone. And lo and behold, no coincidences in the world of divine providence. It was Rabbi Munk's daughter. So I told Sarah, with pleasure and with honor, tell me where they're buried. And she gives me the coordinates. And lo and behold, it is about 15 steps away from the grave of Rav Amital. Two people from Hungary made it to Israel that influenced, I'm sure, thousands of students, buried on the same row in Har HaMenuchot. And I hope their schut, a schut of two people that dedicated themselves to education of youngsters, to the Tinokot Shel Beit Rabban, Ya'amod Lahem, V'livnei Mishpechotehem, to them and to their families and to all their students and to all Klal Yisrael. I hope and pray that I'll be able to live up to the zchut I had, to have a true Talmid Chacham teach a mere third grader.